I need somebody help, not just anybody help. You know I need someone help.
Welcome to the Steph and Frank Show, Friends with Benefits. We hope you enjoy the show today, and thanks for listening.
Are we recording?
We are recording. We're live. Well,
Yay!
not live, but recording.
All right, welcome to the fourth session of Friends with Benefits with Frank and Stephanie. We are very excited for today's topic. It's obviously top of mind for everybody, and I know we've been hearing a lot about it over the last, 5, 6, 7 years. It seems to be the hot topic. So we thought we would demystify everything well-being and engagement, health and productivity, whatever we want to call it. I think it's called many things. And we are very fortunate today to have Stephanie from our practice here at Alliant join us to join our conversation today so that we can talk everything well-being and engagement. So I'm going to kick it off. Today we have with us me, obviously Frank Verdi, and we have Stephanie Miller. And then we also have Stephanie Charmville from our Wellbeing and Engagement practice here to join us today. So we're going to talk everything well-being and engagement. I don't want this to be a salesy presentation. We're not trying to push our practice down your throat, but we know as HR professionals and as companies, our well-being of our employees is very important to us. Not only does it help with productivity, does it help with growth, does it help with retaining and attracting talent because we want to create a really good culture of caring within our organizations, but we really care about people, and we want them to be, to be well. We want them to be able to further their wellness journeys however they see fit, and give them the tools and resources where we can to help them. But if anybody's been through a well-being and engagement program set up at their employer, they know there are so many vendors. It seems like since the pandemic, every single week, somebody else is popping up in this space. And how do we demystify that? How do we uncover or, figure out who's the best of the best? What does Stephanie and I do? We call Stephanie, because this is all Stephanie does.
The other Stephanie.
Right. Stephanie and Stephanie. I know, confusing. You can call me Stephanie too if you want to. But we have a 50-50 shot you're going to get our names right? So so Stephanie, talk to us a little bit about the landscape of well-being and engagement today, what you're seeing, how we can help employers. So as we spend our time together over the next half hour, let's just have a free-flowing conversation about well-being. Let's talk about how do we start one? Where do I go? What can I do? How do I find the right vendors with the landscape that's out there? What tools and resources are there in the market, and does Alliant have to help me navigate this and create a dashboard so I can look at a moment's notice what I have to explain it to a new hire or in my existing employees during open enrollment? And why do it? Why would an employer want to do this and put all themselves through all this aggravation and, quite frankly, all this work when an HR person already has so much on their plate? Would we do this? And that's kind of what I want to get out of this session. Stephanie, if I missed anything, or Stephanie, if I missed anything, let's talk about that too. So let's kick this off with, why do a well-being program?
Sure. Well, there's two reasons to that. There's several, but really the employee spends a majority of their time at work. So we definitely want to make sure that you're offering the tools and the resources they need to maintain their health. The employer, can look at it as the side that you speak about: productivity, attracting and retaining talent. Yes. But also it is the right thing to do for your employees, since that's where it's their life, living at work, really. So having those programs available to them, you offer them, the employee benefits on the healthcare side of it. So we want to make sure we're integrating well-being with your employee benefits. How do you start a well-being program? Really, survey your employees. Talk to them, make sure you're offering things that they would participate in. What would they like to see? Would they participate if there's an incentive attached? Are they looking for more other types of benefits, such as gym reimbursements? Are they looking for, fertility assistance? Look at the data. We want to always make sure Alliant always, talks to our clients about putting impactful programs in place, looking at the data, surveying the employees, getting data from their healthcare carrier claims, getting data from disability analytics, making sure we're touching on everything that we need in order to put a program out there. We also look at healthcare trends, what's trending in our nation. We know mental health is a big thing. We know that the GLP-1 weight loss medications is big right now. So all the avenues that we can to support employees, that's what we would look at in order to put a program in place. So starting by assessing your population, find out what they participate in, looking at your data, and put a strategy in place. If there's one thing that we tell our clients to really focus on is health risk prevention. We've seen, through the pandemic that a lot of people were missing their annual physicals, and in turn missing their cancer screenings. So now we're seeing more and more late stage cancers being diagnosed. So we need to get back to getting to the doctor, establishing a relationship with your primary care physician, getting that annual exam. That way we can offset that diabetes diagnosis or hypertension or high cholesterol. Because what we are seeing is the participants who are members who have those chronic conditions are accounting for a majority of the healthcare spend. So step one,
Steph,
get an
is that
annual
like
exam.
the 80-20 rule?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you said something very interesting, which you hit upon, and you probably didn't even realize you did it, but I think it's really important to note. I think there's a social responsibility on the employer part, and what you hit on, which was interesting, is we spend more hours a day at work and with the people that we work with than we do our own families.
Yes.
So an employer, in a sense, is your family, and you want
Right.
your family to be healthy. And so I think it makes sense that an employer would want to, engage in this program because this is their family and they've got to take
Right.
care of their family. And these people are helping them make money and helping them sustain their business and grow their business. So I think it's important that employers be vested in a well-being program. But like we talked about earlier, there's just so many vendors out there. How do
Yes.
we detangle them? And you're right. And I don't know if you know this, so it's you hit upon something really personal to me was mental health because we did I think it was our second podcast that we
Yeah.
had did was based on mental health and mental health awareness and the struggles that people are going through. I mean, I talked personally about mine during the pandemic. I was by myself in Boston. My entire
Mhm.
family was in New York. I was alone for the first time in my life for like shut in for like 3 months. And I really struggled. I think I had
Right.
PTSD. I think I still do. I
Oh.
ended up having to go on a minor dose of Lexpro, and
Mhm.
which I never wanted to take medication. To me, as an Italian Greek, it's like admitting I'm weak. And so it was a really big struggle for me
Yeah.
to admit I needed help and I couldn't get through it on my own and I struggled. So mental health is a big topic. So I'm so appreciative that you brought it up because it is a topic that quite frankly Stephanie and I feel really strongly about and we actually spent I think our second whole podcast we think we went 15 or 20 minutes over because we were just so passionate about it. And my
Mhm.
sister, who's a mental health care counselor, she talked about what she's seeing and all these people that she's seen a lot of suicide and she's seen
Yeah.
teen suicide and different things in her practice over the years and it's heartbreaking. So I
Yeah.
Stephanie,
appreciate you bringing up those topics. Very
yeah,
very important to me.
I actually have a question around that.
Sure.
The mental well-being part, the stigma around that. I think it's lessening, but there probably is still some stigma. And so I feel like some of the conversations I've had with employers um in the past couple of months has been around their EAP and people not utilizing an EAP or some of their uh point solutions slash other vendors because there's still the stigma around the EAP because they
Well, they
just
don't want their
wait.
employer. They're afraid their employer is going to find out why they're calling.
Yeah,
If
but
we're nuts, if we're nuts, I think our employer knows to a certain degree. I mean, the client definitely knows. They know I'm nuts, but it's, but I think people are worried that. So I think it's important to know that there are HIPAA laws that protect
Right.
employees. Your employer cannot know anything about your mental health care issues personally or any of that. So don't feel nervous to get the help that you need. But you're right, Stephanie. I think it's people are afraid to take the first step to get the help that they
Mhm.
need. And
well,
mental
I think
health's just one of them.
my
I mean,
question.
I'm overweight. Like, where do I go? I mean, I don't want to go to Weight Watchers. I've tried it. Trust me, I know Weight Watchers, but where do I go to help to lose weight?
Mhm.
I don't want to take Monjaro. I don't want to take Wegovy. There's too many side effects. The first thing it says right on the side of the package may cause cancer if you have a family history, or this could cause cancer. So anything that tells me it's going to cause cancer, I'm not going to do it. But
Well, Frank, my question to her though was, what can employer do to help like revamp their EAP? Like
Yeah.
like rebrand, rename, like is that something that the Alliant Health and Productivity team or Stephanie, you would help an employer do?
Yes, yes, definitely. We work with clients. Worked with one early this morning, just to look at their mental health data around, what should we be doing? Or do they have a high utilization in the health plan? Are people going outside of the network? So if EAP is going underutilized, there's a lot of newer EAP models and EAPs that are actually enhancing their technology platforms. So I think that's step one, is just evaluating your EAP, looking at it and see what has changed, what is updated, especially, since the pandemic. There's a lot of digital tools going into the platform. So employees are able to go in and do like self-guided courses to help them, with their anxiety and things like that. So it's computerized cognitive behavioral therapy. They're also able to do things like text therapy or text coaching with a provider. And if they need a higher level of care, then they're triaged to that. But within the EAP, there are digital tools that can help them with their day-to-day managing stress. There's mindfulness, there's meditations that are available, 24/7 on the EAP platform. So it's really taking a look and evaluating your EAP vendor. There are several EAP add-ons that can be layered to your EAP provider as well. So thinking of particular vendors that offer, just an app. I'm not going to name any names here, but just an app where you can go in and do like a daily meditation. That's an option to layer onto your EAP. If they're looking at like a full comprehensive solution, then they can look at one of the vendors who offer psychiatry, clinical care services, as well as the digital tools as well. So there's definitely newer models out there. So I'd say if an employer is stuck about how do we help our employees in their mental health, let's take a look at the resources you have internally through your EAP. And a lot of the EAPs offer manager trainings and mental health first aid training. So being able to identify employee when they are in crisis and knowing those resources to, share with the employee at the time. So you're not going to get certified to be a clinician, but you're going to be certified to help and recognize the signs. So there's definitely tools and resources out there. There's, a national mental health toolkit that could be shared, and we have resources internally as well, a toolkit. So.
And
So
Steph,
question.
what are some of like if you pick a couple of industries,
Mhm.
what are some of the trends going on? I don't, maybe we can pick on manufacturing and
Mhm.
or healthcare.
Well, I
Right.
was just going to say, Stephanie, to even expand on that further, like, what are the hot topics
Yeah.
trending? Like
Okay.
the key issues, the what are we seeing as top vendors? Like, what's top of mind in the industry, and what requests are you getting?
Wellness as a whole. Right.
Requests for help
Mhm.
from us, from our employers, from our clients, our
Sure.
prospects, because
Mhm.
we sat on a prospect call meeting, I don't know, 3-4 weeks ago, and I reached out to you guys for some help on it. And one of the things is they have an EAP through their medical plan. They also have one through their life and disability program. They also had telemed and teledoc, and they had some
Right.
mental health care. So they would just,
Right.
they have all these things, but at a
Everything.
moment's notice, they can't just pull it together and see what they had. And you explained to me that we kind of have a dashboard, which I didn't even know we had, which is an amazing, because I don't know anybody who does. And I've been, I worked at a couple of the biggest, vendors there are in terms of the broker space. So talk to us a little bit about what we're seeing in the industry. What are the hot topics? What's top of mind on most employers in 2023 4 versus what it was maybe 3 years ago during the pandemic? And what tools and resources do we have to help?
Sure. So first things first, you mentioned the weight loss medications, GLP-1s. So that is definitely hot right now. We are definitely seeing some, parameters being put in place by the health plans in order, is it, being offered to diabetic only patients, or are you opening up to all members on the plan? So there's definitely some parameters being put around it. And we know that really, diet and exercise is going to be needed to maintain that loss through the medical assisted drug. So having the employee set a plan and work with a vendor that's going to help them maintain that weight loss and improve that lean muscle mass, because losing that weight quickly, they'll need that muscle mass to retain it. So we're seeing vendors that are focusing on supporting those individuals on the medication assisted weight loss drugs.
Interesting.
Another thing, we're seeing mental health, of course. We're seeing mental health, even before the pandemic. But as you mentioned, Stephanie, since the pandemic, the stigma has decreased and more employers are really focusing on mental health. So offering that, manager training, not just to the managers, but to everyone. And also, we're also seeing loneliness and isolation, as you mentioned, Frank, is on the rise, and it is a pandemic right now of loneliness and isolation. So how do we connect employees so they don't feel that isolation and loneliness? And that's really connecting them to different resources and groups within the organization. So think different ERGs and volunteering groups and things like that. And on the wellness side of it, even maybe connecting them with a well-being challenge and connect them that way. It's hard when you're a remote employee, you don't work around anyone, you don't see anyone during the day, but getting them together with those particular groups that meet monthly or weekly, and getting together on a well-being platform where you're doing a challenge can help as well. Another thing we're seeing is financial well-being. So the focus around creating an emergency fund, with inflation and everything just being more expensive, just making sure that employees are financially ready when needed, if they need an emergency fund. So that's tapping into your resources on the financial well-being portion, if it's your 401k or 401(k) provider, to offer those sessions out to employees on how to build that fund.
How would you suggest to an employer, because that's a lot of different moving pieces,
It is.
and
It
they're
is.
all whether it's financial or mental or physical, like it all affects
Right.
it affects everything.
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
your job. So how does an employer, if you have 4 or 5 different vendors,
Mhm.
um put it all into a nice little package and not only communicate that we're offering this to you, uh, Miss Smith, or from an employee standpoint, when I need to access any of these, how easy can it be for an employee to be able to access? Are there tools and resources out there to say, oh, I click on one thing or maybe 2
Right.
things to be able to access it all?
Right. Really bringing their, wellness and benefits ecosystem together under one platform, I guess you would
I like
say.
that ecosystem. I like
Yeah.
that.
One platform you would say is the solution. And that's working on, communications and benefit guide, having the appropriate communications out to your employees. There are some platforms out there if the employer has a well-being platform, they're able to integrate and add other benefit solutions on their portal so that the employee is able to see all of the solutions that's available to them right then and there, and having the single sign-on as well will help. But really, I would say the employee communications is key. So it's just being able to see everything in one place in that benefit guide.
And
We've
it's
had
not just
clients
a
who
one
come on
time,
and
Well,
was
it's
I
that
not
think
just
you
a
have to
one,
meet employees where they're at. So
right,
technology
right,
firms might be that, doing it on through an app or
right,
through your phone or text will work. But I also find, and this is not a sexist, misogynistic comment, so please don't take it as that. But I find the women are the CEOs, CFOs, call it what you want, most times in the relationships. And getting the message home to the spouse, I think,
right.
is very, very important.
Mhm.
Especially the guys go, in the meetings. I see, and then if the wife or the partner at home or whoever is the one who does all the paperwork and the bills and all that doesn't see it,
Right.
they don't have a voice in the decision process. So maybe you're not picking the best program for your family, or maybe you don't need to spend, to your point, financial ones, you don't need to buy the
right,
Cadillac or the Mercedes-Benz plan because
Right.
your usage and your needs in the family might be the middle of the road. Maybe you're
Exactly.
okay with the Cadillac, or
Mhm.
the Buick versus the Cadillac. So I think it's important, from a communications perspective, for you to meet your employees where they're at. Is there anything that you find works really well in the communication space that
right.
maybe an employer hasn't thought about? Because I love, and I know this is just me, I love the postcard.
Oh,
And the
great.
reason I like the postcard is I get so much junk mail in white envelopes that
Mhm.
half the time I throw it out and probably didn't even open it. But a
Right.
postcard, I can see right off the bat
Mhm.
what it is. And if it's catchy and has cool colors, or it looks, fancy schmancy, I'll read it for 2 seconds or three
Right.
seconds and see if it's something that I might want to learn more about. And if I
Mhm.
see, oh, it's a hot topic, I'll read through it and I'll click the link or scan the QR code or whatever it is. But if it's in a white plain envelope, I'm going to tell you, 98% of the times, I think it's telemarketing or whatever it is, and I throw it out.
Right, right. And that goes back to your previous comment of meeting employees where there are. We definitely look at, generational trends and how certain generations view communications or accept communication. So, Frank, you might like that postcard, but someone who is a 30-year-old in the tech industry
Might go,
might like a text,
right.
right? They might like
Yes.
text notifications. So it definitely depends on the generational portion aspect of it.
You can
But there's
say I'm old. It's okay.
but
I still look good. 55 and still look good.
yeah, you do. Of course you
Not a wrinkle to be had.
do. Love it.
Well, Frank, Alliant doesn't pay for your Botox, honey.
I don't never had
Okay.
Botox. Not that I wouldn't, not that I'm passionate. I haven't needed it yet.
You look great. But yes, it really depends on how that individual generation would accept the communications for sure. And I want to just go back to the vendor landscape because I know we mentioned it a few times but haven't talked about it. So yes, it's exploding. It will continue to explode. There's new vendors popping up all the time. And the amount of emails. I mean, we have our own vendor department, so I don't even want to
I don't
know
even know how you keep
emails
up, to
they
be honest
get.
with you. It's
I
But
like
don't either.
they're blowing me up on LinkedIn,
I
and then
know.
they find a way to get through LinkedIn and send me messages, and I'm like,
Right.
who are
Yeah.
you? So I'm like, swipe left half the vendors. But meanwhile, there might be somebody really good. There might be somebody really good that I'm missing out on because
Right.
I hate to say it, but I have marketing fatigue from
That
all
is
of them
so
trying to
funny you
find
mentioned
me.
that. Right. And I'm gonna say, like, you know, swiping left on a vendor, if only there was a app or solution
An
where we
app for that.
can also the vendors. Well, we
There
have
we
a vendor
go.
directory.
There's our next $1 million idea: how to swipe left on all the vendors out there.
We need to swipe right on a majority of them, as we know that a lot of our clients require these solutions. But we do have a vendor directory that we use internally, Benefit Pitch, and we use it to house all the vendors within the different categories. Stephanie, you can go on, Frank can go on and
Right.
just kind of search a topic and be able to get vendors within this area. Our team does a good job at putting materials and updating materials in that space so that you're able to see, you know, ROI, case studies, things like that. And there's a vendor contact in there as well. Another thing that is available is setting reviews on the vendor. So you can go in and set a review on the vendor that can only be seen internally. So if any other consultants want to know, I don't know, I want a mental health vendor with a newer EAP model, but I'm not really sure about this one. They can look at the reviews there. So that's how we also just keep a close relationship with our vendor contacts, just because we need to know what the market looks like and we need to know what's changing, who's merging with who. So we definitely have that relationship with the vendors. But there's definitely going to be some that we don't know, would they pop up frequently, but that's why we have a team across the country that can there's always someone who would have heard of them. Then we will start the vetting process.
Yep. So we're coming up on time. So, but there's just one. Before we get into final thoughts, I just have one more question. So I'm going to come at this from a CFO perspective. So I'm going to look at this. Everything. This is all wonderful. I'm an HR VP or head of total. I want to do it all. I want to spend it all. I want to make sure everybody has everything. But let's face it, we only have so much money to spend. We only have so much liquidity, so much free, margin to play with in the organization. And the CFO is going to push back and ask the time-old question: what's the ROI? So if I had to pick 3 top well-being and engagement programs to invest in that not only is going to improve the member experience, make the employees happy, give them some great tools and resources, but also provide a good ROI so that my CFO is going to be like, okay, I'm on board with it. What are those? And what would you suggest those are? And I don't mean to put you on the hot spot.
Yeah,
I mean,
yes,
put you on
but those all go back to data and what you're seeing in your, population. For sure, we're seeing chronic conditions in a lot of the book, and we're seeing that, across the country. So when you're thinking about ROI, really have to think about cost avoidance in the case of if I have employees within my population who are not, high on the chronic conditions, because we typically see if you had high blood pressure, you probably have diabetes along with it. So we see those comorbidities. So avoiding getting those in the first place, or keeping it under control with medication, then you're avoiding those higher healthcare costs. So really focusing on cost avoidance when it comes to health and well-being. And again, goes back to preventive care, getting those physicals. We're seeing high cancer rates as well. So we know that treating late stage cancer costs more to employee, and it's a lot on the individual as well. So getting in and getting those preventive screenings early and knowing when to go to get your preventive screenings. I feel like sometimes, the rules are changing with mammography and things like that. So we want to
And it was impossible, quite frankly, Stephanie, to get an
It was.
appointment up until maybe like a year ago.
Right.
It was impossible to
Right.
get a colonoscopy. I mean, I was scheduled to have one at 50. I didn't get one at 53, and it wasn't because I didn't want one. I
Right.
couldn't get an
It was
appointment. I
just-
mean, they were like a
Exactly.
year out.
Exactly.
So that, I think that's an important topic.
Yes, for sure. So really focusing on cost avoidance as we look at our book, and we see it's heavy on chronic conditions in populations. And we're seeing younger populations being diagnosed with things like diabetes or high blood pressures and younger cancers as well. So I feel like if there's one thing an employer can do, it's really that health risk prevention and focusing on the primary level of care, getting a primary care visit. Whereas virtual care is another trending well-being space topic in the
Love
space.
it.
So we're, looking at virtual care in all aspects, in mental health and primary care. So if you don't have a virtual care benefit for your employees, that's definitely something to look into because they can get their care.
I have one more thing to add.
Yeah.
Not only from a human aspect, and I know this is weird because we are talking about humans in healthcare, but
Yeah.
a lot of employers do offer pet insurance.
Yes.
And I actually am meeting with an old colleague of mine who just went to work for a point solution. They offer like a teledoc for pets.
Oh.
Yeah, most of them do. You know how many times
I
I've
thought,
called?
how
Oh,
great.
that's cute.
Yeah, like, I mean, why not? I mean,
Right.
let's face it, the 20 somethings out in the workforce don't really necessarily care about their own health insurance,
Right.
but they care about
Of
their
their pets.
pets,
They
right?
do. Yeah.
And I think the statistic is that 50% of people that own a pet don't have a primary veterinarian for their pet. So I thought, what a great idea. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I had never heard of that before. I don't know if there are, I haven't even checked into it, but I'm gonna meet with her anyway in a couple of weeks just to hear about it, because I think employers would want to know about that.
I agree with you. I mean, driving around town and you'll see, the boarding places for dogs, pets when you're going on vacation. There's pet daycares. If you're in the
Yes.
office one day, you can bring your
Mhm.
pet.
Both of mine are in doggy daycare right now. Right now as we speak.
It's great.
Exactly. Yes.
Yep.
But yeah, so great session. Had so much fun. I told you it would be just conversation. I know like these podcasts could be, people get nervous with them or whatever. But Stephanie, I'm so glad you joined us today. Any final thoughts before we wrap up? And I just wanted to honestly thank you from the bottom of our heart for joining today. This was really fun. And not only was it fun, but it was also extremely informative, and you're obviously very knowledgeable. And we would love to partner and work with you. And if any of our clients want to partner and work with you or heard anything that resonates with them today, reach out to Stephanie and I, and we'll put you in touch and we can make introductions. But any final thoughts before we wrap up and let everybody go?
I would say that, wellness has evolved over the years, and it's not just a one size fits all solution, and it's not just physical health either. So it's really looking at all dimensions of well-being, physical, financial, mental, social, when putting programs in place for your employees. So definitely, look at the spectrum of well-being before putting anything in place. And as we talked about, just assessing the population. So wellness has changed, and
It has.
And look
And
at your
and
data, get some
yeah,
data and look
data,
at it.
data. So if you can get the data, that's very telling. And I love that you said earlier, ask your employees.
Right,
Trust me, they will tell you what
right,
they like, don't
Mhm.
like, what they want, and what they don't want.
Right.
And people are very honest. And
Mhm.
so give them what they want. If you're going to
Exactly,
spend the money, give them
exactly.
what they want,
And
because
they'll
they'll use it.
participate.
You'll
Right.
use it, and then you'll get the data so that you can, make adjustments as needed. But thank you.
Exactly.
You're
Yes, thank you for
amazing. Today
having
was
me. Thank you.
it
It
was
was
so
fun. Thank
fun.
you.
Yeah, it was so fun. I loved meeting you in
Yeah.
Florida, and I can't wait to
Yeah.
hang out and have some drinks next time I'm in the
Yeah,
city.
perfect.
Yeah.
Great. Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Have a
Bye.
guys.
great rest of your day. Thank you,
You
Stephanie.
too.
Bye.
Bye.